Is credit card debt crushing this generation's hopes for home buying? Let's talk about it on Today in Mortgages. Hey, Dreammakers, welcome back to the show where we're talking about what's real, what's hype, and what you should actually be paying attention to out there in the world of mortgage and real estate news. And Rich, I think we got something we should all be paying attention to today, and that is the current state of credit card debt. Why don't you tee us off? What are we looking at?
It's rising. It's rising, and with interest, the average credit card interest rate at 26% or above. I mean, it's incredible. And with rising debt and the current employment situation, which is still good, by the way, really good, actually. But it just goes to show you this disconnect between employment and earnings. And when it comes to earnings, you got to be able to make enough to pay your credit card debt or living expenses. And by the looks of this article, I mean, we've got $1.12 trillion in revolving credit card debt, which is up considerably since pre-pandemic. So things are happening.
That number doesn't even sound like a real number, Rich. $1 trillion, that's insane. So the article we're looking at is borrowers, especially the young, struggle with credit card debt and potentially bad sign for economy. This is from the AP News. We'll link the article below. But it says here a couple things just in this headline, especially young and a bad sign for the economy. And so, Rich, let's talk about this generationally first. What are we looking at in this article that kind of highlights?
Michael, in this article, it's really talking about the younger generations, which is Gen Z, Gen X. And the highest usage is Gen X. So they're using over 30% of their credit limits right now. And, the funny thing is, and I pulled this from a different article and I'll share it with you so you can put it on this podcast, but it shows the higher the utilization of the credit amount. So if they have $10,000 and they're using 9,000 of it already, the lower the FICO and the higher the default rate. So that's where we're finding is people are really struggling with living expenses right now. And they're using their credit cards more. And when that happens, that at 26% interest on the average credit card today, that's a pretty high minimum payment that they're also tacking on to living expenses that they can't afford anyway. So it's like a double whammy.
A double whammy for sure, Rich. And obviously some of the things you said there highlight this article saying that it's a potentially bad sign for the economy, potential because we haven't really seen a lot of response in the economy yet to this. Spending may be slowing down a little bit. That might be a sign of this. But what else are we seeing? Will we see? And what could be the result of this?
Well, a couple of months ago, Michael, if you don't remember, we kind of spotlighted this a little bit in this pay or buy now, pay later, right? They were using it for groceries. So remember we talked about that's a bad sign when people are having to buy now, pay later for groceries. And now we're starting to see some of the consequences. And with those consequences, I'm talking really about delinquencies. And delinquencies, when you read these articles and you read about delinquencies, they're referring to late pays or customers that are 90 days or more late. And it's risen to 10.7% of all credit card holders right now. So, people are struggling.
Yeah, it is a real struggle out there, and we don't want to discount that. But tell me, Rich, obviously this affects people's ability to buy or potentially buy a home, right?
Of course. Yeah, because as I mentioned earlier, some of these borrowers, the ones that are using credit cards to live on, and the higher their balances to their limits are generally the lower FICO borrowers and the higher delinquent borrowers. So it's really tough for a lot of these folks. When it's really hard to buy a home right now. There's a lot of people that can, but the problem is they're burdened with not just student loans, but credit card debt. And that's becoming a problem. We see this all the time in applications that we're taking on a daily basis.
Yeah, so Rich, I just kind of step out of the data, out of the maybe the article for just a second, and maybe this is editorializing, speculating, but why do you feel like this is happening right now? Like, what is the driver for so much spending on credit cards?
Because they're not earning enough.
Hmm.
You know, what we like to say, a luxury once sampled becomes a necessity, right? There's this YOLO, like, let's get out and go vacation. The pandemic caused a lot of issues that we're learning more and more about as the further we get away. There's some consequences to all that. And one of it was they had a lot of extra spending money during that period and a lot of time off.
Hmm.
So that didn't stop, which is what has kept the economy just so hot, is that all borrowers has been spending, and it went from spending savings. Remember, we did a couple of these shows talking about savings levels dropping considerably. So now we're here 6 months later, and now credit card debt is increasing, which also means delinquencies are increasing. It's because people want to keep living the way they were living before, but the job market is not as good as it was before. You know, these employment reports that have been coming out, they're a little misleading. You got to dig down into the data and realize that, you know, while we added all those jobs last week in the reporting, they don't really separate it all out. You really have to dig down deep into the data to learn 650,000 of those jobs are part-time jobs. So those were new part-time jobs or previous full-time jobs that are now part-time. So those credit card users that went from full to part-time, they're utilizing their credit cards more, driving the balances up, lowering the credit score. So it's a crazy catch 22.
It definitely is, Rich, and I think it's a tough place to be out there. And you got to think that also. You said the pandemic caused spending problems, or you said the pandemic caused some kind of residual effects. And I think one of those is that when you give someone an extra, if you're getting the pandemic payout and you got 3 kids at home and you're getting child tax credits, you might have made or received an extra 10 grand in a single year. And psychologically, it's hard not to build that into this is my income now, and that just was not the case. And so when you kind of set that, like you say, you always say this: a luxury once tasted becomes a necessity. And so I feel like we're still spending like we're making more, or we're getting that money back, or whatever it might be. But the numbers are just astounding here.
They really are. And I wish we had some data versus renters and homeowners, and how many of those are using credit cards. We'll have to do that on a later show because there's over $30 trillion in equity sitting out there with homeowners. So a 8% cash out loan is a lot better than a 26% credit card, interest loan.
Mm.
So there's a lot of equity that people can use today. Use that equity that you've accumulated, over the last, especially over the last, 48 months. That is valuable to you and can save you a lot of money. So if you're interested in an equity loan or a cash out refinance, even though you're sitting at 3%, you need to consider a cash out loan, even if it is 8%, because the savings will be so huge for you.
Yeah, and obviously, Rich, I mean, that is a good fix if you have kind of dug yourself into a hole. But obviously, after you do that, that's a one time fix. You can't keep doing it. And so, but it can be a really effective tool and a really great benefit if you own a home to tap into that equity. And so, the other cool thing about that, here at the network, we actually have a tool that tracks that home equity and will alert borrowers to that opportunity that they have. And so, pretty cool tool that we have here that is helping our people get ahead of this and talk to their past borrowers about this opportunity. Rich, anything else that you got for us on this article and the topic of credit card debt?
All I would say is we all have to be careful with credit card debt. That's no secret. I think a lot of the spending is happening because, we talked about, maybe it's just fun money, but maybe it actually is compensating for living expenses because inflation is still high. When was the last time you went to the grocery store and spent less than $100? I mean, it's just disgusting to walk out with one bag of groceries and you just spent $100. So this is happening to everyone right now. And I think, this credit card usage and the delinquencies associated to it is just a sign that, it's a struggle out there for a lot of people.
And don't even get me started on Costco, Rich. Tell you what, more you spend, the more you save there, right? Anyways, well, thanks so much for talking to us about this, Rich. It's an interesting topic. It's something that we have to be paying attention to, obviously, as loan professionals. We are seeing DTIs that just don't make sense for the home buying process. And so we want to keep informed about this to be able to talk about it well with our borrowers and buyers, and also to coach people through, hey, what this actually looks like, and coaching them into better habits that will allow them to pull that DTI down in the future and hopefully get into the home that they want to be in. If not now, later on down the line. So Rich, thanks again for joining us. Thank you everyone out there for watching, listening, and wherever you are, we appreciate you. We'll see you next time on Today in Mortgages. Today in Mortgages is produced by Network Funding LP, which is an equal housing lender, NMLS 2297. The content of this program is meant to be a commentary on mortgage and real estate news, and any discussion of rates and or products should not be taken as an individual mortgage or home buying advice or pricing estimates. And any commentary on this show should not be considered a promise to make a loan. All applicants for a loan must qualify, and you should consult a professional regarding your individual loan scenarios for your financial situation. Visit our website at nflp.com/licenses for all state licensing and other legal information.